If they called off practice, do we think that they called your family and told them they were calling off practice? Probably. Okay.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We find ourselves this evening in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 1. And so we're going to kind of dig into this. It begins, remember that we've spent a lot of time in various different things about relationships and things they weren't supposed to do, and how to do the sacrificial system and all of that. And in a way, we're culminating some of that. And it's kind of important that we deal with that. So
Leviticus chapter 19, verse 1.
Verse 1.
Okay.
So we begin with, and the Lord spoke to Moses saying, okay, speak to all the congregation of the people of Israel and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. Now, the first thing we need to do is define the word holy here. Okay. The word holy deals with the discussion of being set apart. Okay. You are to be different. You are to be set apart to me. Okay. Because I am set apart from all things. That's the idea.
Oh, I'm in 15. That's one.
Okay. So, and by the way, let's make sure we understand, because this is an important part of this as well. When he says this, what he is getting at is this, is you are to be different. So remember chapter 18, don't be like the people of Egypt. Don't be like the people of everywhere else. Okay. Be different. You will be holy. You will be set apart and different. And okay. So he then goes on. He says, every one of you shall revere his father and his mother and his father. Okay. So now notice we come into the discussion of the 10 Commandments for a moment. Okay. And you shall keep my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. Now, the thing that is very important here is that he is talking about the way, things that will set them apart from the other nations. Okay. So the first one, you shall revere your mother and father. Okay. You will honor them. You will treat them with respect. You will treat them as something important and special.
I'm sorry, revere sounded derogatory.
No,
Sounded like
revere is.
back, and I was like,
It made me think of Paul Revere.
But the idea in that is this. Okay. So if you look at, and let's just deal with our culture today. Okay. It is interesting to note how life seems to become less valuable at the two ends.
What do you mean at the twins?
So the very, very young and the very, very old.
yeah, that is fair.
Gotcha.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So part of the discussion here is that there is a movement within pagan culture to say, well, when you're too old to be of any value, then why should we?
Take care of you and help you.
Right. And so you have children that are not willing to help their parents at all, that are not willing to take care of their parents. And what it's saying is, one of the ways that you will show yourself to be different is that you will show respect and honor to the ones who brought you into this world. Okay.
For a second, I thought of
Then second, you shall keep my Sabbaths. So there are days that are set apart for me, for you to worship and for you to rest. You will keep them. Now, this is a very interesting discussion, and I'm going to say it this way. If you were to really look, there is actual physical value to taking a day to rest. Okay, but we live in a culture that is going 1,000 miles a minute. There's,
Still
there
not
never
gonna
stops.
some people.
You mean so-
I mean, life,
Life.
that it never stops, it never ends, it never stops. Okay, and what God is telling the children of Israel is, one, to honor me and to show yourself to be different, but one, because it's important to you, because, well, I made you that way. You will, for 6 days a week, you will work, and then you will take a day for me and for yourselves.
Yep.
Okay, I am the Lord your God. I am the one who is in control of this. Then do not turn to idols or make yourselves any gods of cast metal. I am the Lord your God. Okay, so in other words, what it's saying is, make sure that you keep from worshiping things that are created by you, or worshiping things that are part of the creation.
Like nature and trees and
Yes.
stuff.
Okay. Now, if you were to go through and look at the Old Testament scriptures, you will find that the Bible has a very, very low opinion of idols.
I mean, rightfully so.
Okay. In Ezekiel, particularly, it's funny because he actually, the way it's spoken in Hebrew, he's calling idols little pieces of crap.
Ooh.
Okay. Now, but remember, even more funny is the discussion in Isaiah or Jeremiah, where he talks about idolatry, and he says, so the guy goes out and he cuts down a tree to make firewood, and then he takes part of that firewood and says, I'm going to make myself a god. And so he carves the god out of it and puts it up on his mantle, and it won't stand up, so he nails it there. And then thinks that this thing that he has to keep it from falling over is going to answer his prayers.
Yep.
Okay. That is literally the discussion of scripture when it comes to idols. So he goes on, he says, now, when you offer a sacrifice of peace offerings to the Lord, you shall offer it so that you may be accepted. It shall be eaten the same day you offer it, or on the day after, and anything left over until the third day shall be burned up with fire. If it is eaten at all on the third day, it is tainted. It will not be accepted. And everyone who eats it shall bear his iniquity, because he has profaned what is holy to the Lord. Okay, so now watch. Okay, so here's the picture. When you go and you offer a sacrifice, you do it God's way. Okay, there's no fudging on it.
There's no ad-libbing.
There's no halfway. Okay.
Tweaking the recipe.
Now,
Totally this is
now in verse 9, we kind of change gears for just a minute, and it's very important we get this. Verse 9 through 17 is the picture of how you are to treat your fellow man, under the understanding of, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. Okay. First, when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap your field right up to its edge. Neither shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest. Okay, so here's what that means. So not so much here, but in like Portales and Clovis, they irrigate. Okay. Now the comedy of irrigation in Portales and Clovis is that the field is square, but the irrigation system is round. Okay.
Which is why it looks like a bunch of round circles on Google Maps.
So understand there is a reason. That way you move the water to the middle of the field. You have one place where you have to set the source for the water. And then you just hook it up to that spot, and it is literally the water pressure propels it in a circle.
That is so cool though.
Okay. But in each corner, there is a section of field that is unirrigated. But guess what? It's also typically not planted the same way because they know that it's not going to get the same amount of water. But there's still crops that come up there. It's called volunteer wheat or volunteer corn. And this is part of what it's talking about. First of all, don't try to get every piece of grain. Now, first, don't reap your field right up to its edge. Okay, don't try to get through every single square foot. Then the second one is very, very important. You shall not gather the gleanings after your harvest. So what that means, and we really see it in the book of Ruth. Okay, remember they did all this by hand. Okay, so right, so they would take they would pull together a bundle of wheat, they would cut it, and then they would move on. They'd grab another bundle, they'd cut it, they'd grab another bundle, cut it, and once they got a big enough bundle, then they would tie it with string or cord or something to hold it together, and then they could grab those big bundles and move them in to be worked out, okay, to get the right. Guess what? If you're doing that by hand, what's going to happen every once in a while?
You're gonna drop some.
You're going to drop some.
So don't try and get that.
So the idea is don't go through, reap your entire crop, and then try to go back and pick up everything that got dropped.
Something I wish I'd have known when I was homeless and cross-country traveling. That they.
So now watch, because this is an important part of this. What is the reason for that? Well, it's simply this. You have those within your community who are in desperate need of food. And so by you not being stingy with the way you reap and trying to make sure you get every single stalk, then those who are poor and needy can come up behind you and they can gather enough to eat. Now, I want to be clear when I say this. This is in some ways charity, but it is not welfare. Because guess what? They have to work for it.
Yeah. They gotta walk
Okay.
and pick the stuff up.
Now, the other part of that is this.
Separate the chaff and-
It is also not what we would call today welfare because it's based on individual generosity. Okay, so we go to the book of Ruth and this exact discussion. Ruth and her mother-in-law are desperate. And Ruth goes, I'm going to go out and glean in the fields. And she ends up, and by the way, this is one of these wonderful things where God is the one doing it. God sends her or guides her to the field of a man named Boaz. Boaz is a righteous man at a time where not very men were righteous.
So like today.
And so it's the middle of the harvest season. And so Boaz has all of his workers out there harvesting. And so the picture that it gives is there is a group of men who are going around with the scythe, cutting the grain and laying it. And then a group of women who are coming behind and gathering it up and binding it.
So they have a-
Okay. Ruth is going behind them, picking up what they drop. Boaz recognizes what Ruth, as a foreigner, has done to take care of a person who is a relative of Boaz. And he says, let her work, let her get as close to the bundling as she wants. And in fact, every once in a while, pull a few heads out and throw it down on the ground so that there's some extra. What is he
super
doing?
sweet.
He's being generous.
Have a
Okay.
loose hand.
When we talk about, and I want to say this very fair. It is a different thing for a group of people to choose to be benevolent to those who are in need,
What's that word?
to do good for people who are in need, to
That's what-
provide.
Benevolent?
Right, like a food pantry at a church
Okay,
that,
good.
okay, or a clothing ministry at a church or whatever it is, okay? I've seen churches that one of the ministries they perform is this, that they have dress clothes.
Oh, yeah.
And so if somebody comes in and says, I'm desperate, I've got a job interview and I need something nice to wear, then, okay, come back and find something. Well, what is that? It's benevolence. It's not welfare. Welfare by definition is the government,
Okay,
okay?
got you. It'd be like Caesar saying, oh, well, you're a widow, here, have this amount of money every month. That would be.
Right.
Or this amount.
Okay.
of food.
So
Welfare is
Okay.
provided by the government and
charity
is
is individuals.
charity is
Okay.
Okay.
business.
Okay.
Will.
So, but notice what God is saying. I expect you to be charitable. That's a powerful statement to go, hey, people, I expect you to be charitable. I expect you to do good for people who are in need.
You know what's so hard about that? Is there's no self in it, you know, and people are.
Well,
really
but here's the funny part. Do you know the people who are usually the most generous? The people
People that have a lot.
that have known what it is to want.
Yeah.
I think of Steve Kent. Steve Kent does so much for this community, but he will tell you he had a time in his life where the only thing he owned was his truck. He had the clothes on his back. Yeah, no, it's her husband.
Or her husband. Gotcha.
Okay, he was completely broke. The only thing he had was a pickup and it didn't run. And he said he's basically homeless. And God has blessed him. And one of the things he said is, I do my best to help everybody I can help. Why?
Yeah.
Because I know what it is to be desperate.
Yeah.
It's people like that who know
Okay.
like to go through
So
that.
it goes on. You shall not strip your vineyard bare. Okay. Nor shall you gather the fallen grapes. You should. Okay.
Right.
Well, but it doesn't mean, now watch, it doesn't mean that you can't go in and eat the ones that fell.
Oh,
It
okay.
means don't harvest the ones that fell.
Oh, okay, so you can walk to the field in your own field and eat the ones that fell.
Mhm.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. Well, and part of that discussion is this, whose field is it?
God's,
Well, but it's also yours.
but it's yours, because you tend to.
Mhm. So you get the reward of being able to eat the fruit of your own vineyard. What it's meaning is, don't go into a situation where you strip every single grape out of your field so there's none left. Because the poor and the stranger, that's what sojourner means, the foreigner
Foreigner.
Yeah,
who's traveling through your land, I want you to care for them. And by the way, later it brings this up. It says, why? Because you used to be that. Because you were a sojourner in Egypt.
Yeah.
Okay. So you shall not, okay, you shall not steal, you shall not deal falsely, you shall not lie to one another. So don't cheat and swindle. You'll not swear by my name falsely, and so profane the name of the Lord your God. I am the Lord. Be honest in your dealings. So be generous, be fair and honest. Then it goes, don't oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of a hired worker shall not remain with you all night until the morning. So in other words, and by the way, this is what it's talking about. Pay the person promptly.
And that's just good business right there, because
Right.
you want to pay your workers or they
But understand, okay, so,
That's right,
so
we
this
don't.
is one of these things that I think is funny, okay? So let's deal with the state of New Mexico for a minute. So whenever there's a grant for the school,
Mhm.
the state gets control of the money until the money's been spent. Which means the state gets the interest off of the money that's sitting in the bank until such time as the school that chooses to spend it.
That doesn't make sense.
Well, it doesn't make sense, but the idea is, so this is saying, okay, so I keep the money overnight so that I can whatever.
Okay, yeah.
If you have a guy come and work for you for 8 to 5 day laborers, we don't have as many of them here, but there are places where that is an
Oh, yeah.
extremely common. I'm sorry, babe, if you're concerned about it, don't.
Got it.
Okay, yeah, leave it alone. I
Okay.
apologize.
It's all right. It's fine.
So,
Yeah,
but they're all over the place.
Yeah,
Okay, so then the idea is at the end of the day, pay them.
yeah.
Hey,
Make sure.
good morning.
Yeah, where did all our children go? My
Sorry.
child was supposed to be in here because she came home early.
Okay, so you shall not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block before the blind. Don't curse someone who can't hear you, and don't put something in the way of somebody who can't see. Okay. You shall fear the Lord. So what does that mean? You probably ought to worry if you start doing that. So watch. Don't be a hindrance to the helpless. Instead, help them. Why? Because they're my children. Remember the New Testament, what you do to the least of these, you've done to me.
Yeah, that's a scary thought right there.
Okay. You shall do no injustice in court. Shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great, but in righteousness shall you judge your neighbor. So it doesn't matter whether they're rich or poor. You deal with the truth. Okay. Shall not go around as a slanderer among your people. You shall not stand up against the life of your neighbor. I am the Lord. Don't hate your brother in your heart, but you shall reason frankly with your neighbor, lest you incur sin because of him. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the sons of your own people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Okay. One of the big things in all of this is love your neighbor just as you would love yourself. It's a very powerful, both Old Testament and New Testament thing. Okay. Then verse 19, you shall keep my statutes. You shall not let your cattle breed with a different kind. Okay. You shall not sow your field with 2 kinds of seed, nor shall you wear a garment of cloth made of 2 kinds of material.
And we're out.
Yeah.
But the reason that I bring this up, okay, the simple discussion here is this: don't mix. Now, the idea here is not so much for us, is not so much the cloth and all of that. We are not to be mixing ourselves with that is unpure. What does the Bible say? Do not be unequally yoked. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have people in your life who are non-believers, because what should you be doing with them? Witnessing.
Yeah.
But
Don't marry somebody that's not a believer.
don't yoke yourself.
Is that what
It's
that
not
means?
just marriage.
What else do they mean besides
So
that?
don't go
Don't
become
get into a
business.
contract with them.
Don't become business partners with someone.
Oh.
Don't become.
Okay.
Why? Because if they are not righteous, it will
Astray, yeah. Make it
Well,
small.
and it will damage your reputation.
I've got about 10 years experience in that.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, okay, we're gonna skip 20 through 22. 23 says, when you come into the land and plant any kind of tree for food.
20
Verse 20,
through
23.
23 or through 22 is precisely in scripture where it tells you not to be
About-
homosexual.
About same-sex
Mhm.
relationships.
Yeah.
Well, this one's the slave
Well, it's the
discussion.
slave
This
one,
is the
yeah.
slave discussion. Chapter 18 has that.
That's that one.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But it says, when you come into the land and plant any kind of tree for food, then you shall regard its fruit as forbidden. 3 years it shall be forbidden to you. It must not be eaten. And in
I
the,
think that's interesting.
okay,
I don't understand why, what the whole purpose, was there a purpose to it, or was it just do as I said?
So to be honest with you, it takes about 3 years for a fruit tree to be
mature.
legitimately fruitful
Okay.
and stuff. So
Yeah, well, they don't start producing fruit for sometime after they start
Mhm.
growing.
So even if it's transplanted, right, and it was a
Oh,
producing
gotcha.
one before and stuff, if it's transplanted, the next few
3 years.
seasons of it are not going to.
Okay.
Go
So
create
some
bitter
of,
fruit.
so,
Because of the stress of being transplanted,
Mhm.
probably.
so some of it is a discussion of because I said so. But it is also an idea of how this works. And watch how he phrases it. He says the first 3 years you won't eat its fruit. On the 4th year, it's an offering to the Lord,
The entire crop.
the entire crop. But in the 5th year, you may eat of its fruit. But here's the point of that and why this is important. This set of rules comes with a promise. If you will do it the way I said, that 5th year will be incredibly bountiful.
I think it would also serve the purpose of teaching people a little patience.
Mhm.
You know, like the world we live in right now is just, I want what I want, when I want it, and I can usually get it.
Yep.
You know, but back then you didn't, life was not like that. You couldn't just call up the pizza place, have them deliver your pizza.
Right,
If
yeah.
you didn't cook or do something to get your food, you weren't eating.
Yep.
Plain and simple.
Okay. So you shall not eat any flesh with the blood in it. You shall not interpret omens or tell fortunes. By the way, let's just be completely fair. Horoscope.
Oh, yeah, I don't follow those anymore.
Okay.
Been a long time.
It's fortune telling.
It is fortune telling.
Now, often in our culture, it's just so vague that you might get right once in a while. You know, it's a broken clock's right twice a day. But but it says don't do it. Okay. You shall not round off the hair on your temples or mar the edge of your beard. Now, that is a cultural thing. Okay, it's important. Don't.
Like the Orthodox Jews got those curly long locks that
Uh-huh.
go down the sides of their face.
So we don't know exactly, but I'm going to make it an educated guess. If you do that, then you are looking like
Everybody
the
else.
pagans.
Mhm.
But this way people can look at you and see
And
you're
you are
different.
set apart. Yeah.
You are different.
You shall not make cuts on your body for the dead or tattoo yourself. I'm the Lord.
Well, that ship sailed.
So, but notice there is a point here for the
For
dead.
the dead.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, a lot of my tattoos could probably be considered for
Right.
the dead because they're skulls and
Mhm.
zombies,
Mhm.
however,
even though they weren't
Right.
technically for anybody in particular.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
but what is it really? you shouldn't look like everybody else.
Shouldn't look like everybody else.
Okay. This one's scary. I'll be fair. Do not profane your daughter by making her a prostitute.
Well, that's just sound advice.
But I want you to hear me.
Wait, let me get this straight before I do anything else. What is prostitute?
So it means turning your daughter over to other men to make you money by them having sex with them.
All right, go.
Lest the land fall into prostitution and the land become full of depravity.
Check mark.
How in the heck is the land gonna, what is that?
Just think about, okay, so depravity means that there's no concern for others, that there.
Oh, yeah, we're already
is,
in depravity.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay,
So-
but, okay, oh, the people, not, I'm thinking like the land, the earth. like the
Oh,
earth's going
yeah, no,
down.
like the people
Like,
of the land.
okay, cause
Yeah.
I'm thinking, how they're gonna go back.
Right. No.
Well, but there is an answer to that question because God stops blessing it.
Cause God's, okay, that makes sense too, okay.
So
That's fair.
understand.
No.
Oh, yeah. no,
So-
go around already,
So
okay.
watch. And this is an important part of this too. Typically, in the culture that they're dealing with, prostitution evolves around pagan religion. Okay, there's a pagan god of prostitutes.
Really?
Yes.
How did I not ever know that?
Yeah.
No, wow.
So it had to do with
So-
temple stuff and everything, so they're paying them like as an offering kind of thing. Or they're
So-
being presented as an offering.
So this is a little further in the future, but whenever you get into the discussion of the Greek religion, there is a temple in Corinth that had 1,000 priestesses that their job as priestesses was to act as prostitutes. That was their holy job.
Wow. That's crazy.
That's
Mhm.
not.
That's high price escort right there.
That is like super, they're making bank. You know they're being treated well.
Right?
Okay,
Wow.
Yeah.
so don't do it.
Don't do it.
Okay.
Okey-dokey.
Keep my Sabbaths, reverence my sanctuary. I am the Lord. Okay.
Okey-dokey.
Now, do not turn to mediums or necromancers. Okay. So a medium is one who talks to the dead. A necromancer is one who supposedly raises the dead.
Raises the dead, yeah.
Okay. Through magic.
Magic and black magic and
Mhm.
necromancy.
Do not seek them out. And so,
Now, Coach C has before told the story of ghost feeling before, where someone apparently, I guess, died of shock and somehow came back.
Mhm.
So
I understand.
That's okay. But like,
Well, he didn't invite them back, I'm sure.
okay.
That's really what it's
They
talking
didn't have
about.
no Rituals. to
Don't-
bring
It's,
them
it's,
back.
it's, that's really what it's talking about, is don't sit there and be like, oh, bring back Granny. Oh, I hope my mom doesn't watch
So-
this. I just used
So by the
Granny.
way,
I think that.
So by the way, let's make sure we understand there's a story later. King Saul at the very end of his life. God has stopped talking to him. He is no longer in a relationship with God and he decides he needs some advice. And so he goes to a medium,
Mhm.
the witch of Endor. Okay,
Saul's the one that was chasing David, right?
yes,
Okay.
okay. But she is a medium. And he asked her to bring up Samuel.
Oh,
Now-
so we can talk to him.
Here's the thing.
Get advice.
She brings up Samuel. The Bible says she does. And what the funny part is Samuel goes, why do you want to talk to me? You're the one who messed up. So,
He said, Samuel's like, I already told you what God said. It's on you.
okay. So,
it's your fault.
basically tells him you're going to be dead you're going to be dead in like a day. I mean, it's like you're about to go into battle and you're going to die.
And
You're going to come join me, is how he says, you're going to come join me in death. Now, here's the thing, and this is a very, very important element to this as we kind of move. Okay. The Bible does not say that they're all fakes. It says that they're all demonic. They're all of the devil.
Yeah.
Okay, so the witch at Endor brought back Samuel. But it was God who allowed her to bring back Samuel through dark magic. Okay, Paul, when he is walking through, and I don't even remember what city, but he's walking through town, and this girl who is a fortune teller is walking behind him, telling everybody, yeah, this, they come with the true God, and blah, 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 blah. And Paul turns around and goes, come out. And he casts a demon out of her.
Yeah.
Now watch, he doesn't like we often do with the psychic friends. Now they're just a bunch of fakes. He casts a demon out of her.
Yep. I remember that story.
Okay, there are.
And the people she was with got mad because she no longer could make that money.
Right. By the way, that is also a form of prostituting
Okay.
because you are using.
Your body
Mhm.
In a
Okay.
way that is unholy.
and.
You shall stand. Okay, so you shall stand up before the gray head and honor the face of an old man. You shall not despise a person who's old.
Oh.
And you shall fear your God. I am the Lord. When a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall do him no wrong. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the natives among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God.
So no self-defense.
No, that's not what it means.
So.
A sojourner is one who chooses to come in and live in the land, but they are not a.
From California.
Okay, so
I choose to live here and I'm from California.
so let's take the discussion of Ruth again. Okay. Ruth was a sojourner. She was a foreigner who had come to live in the land of Egypt or in the land of Israel. Now, the truth of the matter is, it is very clear in the discussion that because she had stepped into covenant with the Lord God, she became one of God's people. But we can say with some certainty that while Boaz treated her well, not everyone would have.
Well, no, and part of the reason, especially women wouldn't have, because she would have been beautiful.
Uh-huh.
She would have been striking from where she was from.
Mhm.
And so they aren't going to receive her well,
Okay.
that's for sure.
So what it's saying is not that you can't defend yourself from an enemy, but when someone comes to live in your land and live in your land in peace, treat them well.
Yeah. Don't make
Because-
them an enemy when
Mhm.
they're not already.
So I guess I'm not trying to say that the Bible says if they attack first, then you have the right
So-
to attack.
So what we're.
That's
saying
a
is
later
this is
discussion.
Completely different thing.
This isn't about war. This is about a stranger coming in and living in the land.
I was thinking small terms of like if someone barges into your house
So
without asking.
that's a
Okay.
different discussion.
Yeah, and it does come up later, even that part is.
Okay.
Okay.
In fact, at one point it says if a person breaks into your house in the middle of the night and you strike him and kill him, then you're not liable. If it's in the middle of the day and you can see whether he's armed or not, then you are liable.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes
Okay.
sense. Okay, I just
So-
wanted to get that out of the way. 'Cause that
So
felt a little weird to me.
the last verse, and we're going to stop here. I know it's a little early, but we're still going to cut off here. You shall do no wrong in judgment in measures of length or weight or quantity. Okay, he goes on to explain. You shall have just balances, just weights, a just ephah, and a just hin.
Okay.
Okay,
Just ephah. What is a just ephah?
ephah is a measurement of a size of grain,
Him. What
is oil.
oil? Okay.
So like, I can give you the exact. A hin is about 4 quarts.
So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, about a gallon or 3.5 liters.
Okay.
And an ephah is about 3/5 of a bushel or 22 liters. Okay, an ephah usually was used to measure grain. A hin was usually used to measure oil. But what it means is this, and this is a very, very important element to this. At that time, and in a lot of ways still, if I take a scale, it measures weight in a certain way.
Yes.
Okay. In biblical times, they would use a balance. Okay. And so you would set the grain on one side of the balance, and then you would take these little lead weights and you would put them on there until it leveled. And then you knew how much it weighed.
Dude, we totally still use that when I was in high
Now,
school.
you could use no quarters because they weigh a certain amount.
So, but here's what it's saying.
Like, okay, those are actually used as a common thing. in science.
Yes, they are.
Still,
But here's what the point is. Okay. You have your balance and you are selling grain. And your 1 pound weight is actually 7/8 of a pound. And then when you're buying grain,
so it's like they hollowed it out.
and then when you're buying grain, your 1 pound measure is 1 1/8. So when you buy, you get more than a pound of grain for the price of a pound
An unfair.
weight.
But when you sell, they get way less than a pound.
Okay.
It's
So-
like air and potato chip bags,
Yep.
Okay.
in my
So-
opinion.
You
So,
don't seem happy
now-
about that.
Now, I will tell you that still to this day,
It is true.
supposedly they are supposed to, like potato chips are bagged by weight.
I was like,
That
Potatoes.
that a bag of potato chips is supposed to weigh a certain amount. It is a common practice with that if you don't want to raise the price
then you
for the bag, you lessen the weight inside the bag. And then you still make more money. Okay, but in our culture and because of our rules, it is supposed to say on the bag how much weight is there. Okay, when we're talking unfair weight, it is not necessarily an unfair weight if your weight is not exactly a pound, as long as you use the same weight both ways.
Yeah.
So if I have a weight that I think is a pound, but it's actually 1 1/8 of a pound, then as long as I use it the same way, that when I'm selling, I give them 1 1/8 of a pound for the price of a pound. And when I'm buying, I buy 1 1/8 of a pound for a pound, then it's technically a fair weight. The unfair weight is when you skim it both ways.
so
So
instead of
use
it
a
being-
just
Weight.
true to scale.
So instead of being like a pound and an eighth on this side and a pound and an eighth on this side, it's like a pound, like 7/8 of a pound on this side, 7/8 of a pound on this
Right.
side, but you're selling it.
Now I will tell you that there is still a point to say that when you have a weight that you say is a pound, it should be a pound.
It should be a pound.
But the ultimate discussion is don't sell with one set of weights and buy with a different set of weights.
Going back into drugs. a little
Yeah,
bit
a
here.
little bit here.
That's exactly what I was thinking too.
Okay.
I always hated it when
It
my
is
section
why
ordered the other day.
we should not sample the goods.
You shall have just balance. Okay. Why? I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and you shall observe all my statutes and all my rules and do them.
I
Yes,
am
be-
the Lord.
be fair.
I am
said
The
so.
Lord.
That is what God is saying,
Yep.
And
because
be
I
prepared
said
to
so.
be weighed at the same with your own scales
Mhm.
when it comes to God.
Mhm.
Yep.
I know
That's
that's in there somewhere.
that's a critical element.
For by that measure
Okay.
shall be judged.
Yes, there it is. That's the one.
So make sure that so it's really the ultimate discussion of about half this chapter is don't cheat your neighbor
Nope.
That makes sense. 'Cause it says
and be generous to your neighbor.
love your neighbor as yourself.
Okay.
Treating them as not
So-
loving.
That's not very good. Lisbon.
Right. It's not loving. Okay, so we're gonna stop right there. We will pick up on chapter 20 on
Punishment and disobedience. Yay!
a week,
Punishment and disobedience.
a week from Sunday.
Oh, wait, what?
Yeah. we have
Sunday's
sports
Mother's
today.
Day,
This coming Sunday's Mother's Day, so.
so we won't do evening.
And then.
And then.
Wednesday-
Today is sports banquet.
Yeah,
So
Okay.
it will be a
well,
week from Monday before we meet again.
Well, that's just, all right, well, I'm not gonna wait. I'm probably gonna have to do it tonight.
Nope, I agree with you.
write down your questions.
I can't never do that because I'm trying to fall asleep, but
I
I know
know,
a lot
right?
of them. And like, if I can,
And when it comes up again, you always remember.
I
it.
remember.